Good evening, everyone. Tonight we're going to have a study about this Middle East gigantic war that is prophesied to come. We, as present truth believers, know very well that, unlike our fellow Seventh Day Adventist church members, we have searched the prophetic word, we've accepted the Elijah message, and we know what to expect. And so tonight, what we'd like to do is give a little bit of insight from the message about what to expect. What is this telling us as Middle East events start to get real hot? Many of us who have been following the news know very well that it looked like we were pushed to the brink of war just a few days ago. But we don't know the timing. Of course, the Lord knows in His perfect timing when the war will begin. And so our purpose tonight is to go over a little bit about the message and what it says about this war. And we want to kind of give you some enlightenment about certain things to look for, what we can expect, the message is generally what it says about this. So we have prayed and we ask that you do the same. And let us begin. So probably of all the message, this one is one of the most specific about this war and what it's going to cause. Of course, as we read it, the powers of the earth are engulfed in a gigantic war. The wicked in the church shall be cut off, no more to pass through her. Very specific time frame here. We see that while this gigantic war happens in the Middle East, then it is that the church purification, Ezekiel 9 judgment comes. So this gives us a pretty clear timeline to know when to expect this solemn, the great and dreadful day, the Bible calls it, and the scenario about what to look for during this time. Some brethren have asked me whether they think that this war is right after the church purification, or does the church purification happen before this war, and all these. And I try to point them back to this, what this clearly says, and it says while. So we know that while the world is engaged in this war, we don't know if it's a short 7, 10, 15-day war. We don't know if it's dragged out several weeks. We don't know that, but we do know while it's happening, sometime during that engagement is when the church judgment will come upon on the church. And so this is a good signpost for us to know and learn. Now, here's a quote that we found that's helpful to know a little bit more. We'll remain quiet just for a little bit so that you can read it on your own here. So what we see here, and one of the things that I want to highlight is that right after this war is finished, we notice that it says the servants of God, which we know from studying the present truth is 144,000, shall flee to the valley. So apparently they have a, um, a focus directly towards the Middle East, directly going towards where that war is just now over. Okay, and we know that it also says that the Lord's feet shall come down. So this is going to make a big valley. So apparently the land's going to be separated to a large degree once this happens. So very, very interesting. And all of this, of course, is to begin the loud cry, final gospel proclamation from the Holy Land. Of course, from our prior studies, many of you have probably learned that Isaiah 2, verse 2 to 3, explains what's going to come from Jerusalem, the Word of God in the final days. Here is a very good chart that we often show. This is the harvest period and the close of probation. What we like particularly in regards to the end time events is it shows a timeline. And we'll take our arrow here. We'll go over a little bit. As you can see up here in the top, it says slain of those who have not the seal. And so, of course, we know this is the church judgment, Ezekiel 9. And the references are Testimonies, Volume 3, page 266 to 267. And, of course, it's Ezekiel 9. And we might want to throw in there Manuscript Releases, Volume 1, page 260. All of those point specifically to what's known as the Great Church Judgment. And this is the next thing that's going to happen. As we just learned, while that war is happening, this also will happen. So what we can see is a double whammy across the world. There's going to be two shocking events, bang, bang, right together. And this, of course, will change the course of humankind. Mankind will now be altered into a different reality. No more will things that were once taking center stage, sports and politics and all these other things will take a back seat to religion, because they will witness this great, great, solemn church judgment among the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And then, of course, we'll have the great demolishing of the Holy Land by the war. It's good. The war is going to be really going to be dreadful for the Holy Land. It's going to be devastating. But the purpose of that is to get the 144,000, the long promised return of God's remnant to his land. That's the purpose. Clean the people out there now and get his people back into the land. So that's what's going to happen. Then, of course, we have down here further, at this point, after that happens, the next thing is the church purification, the church federation. This is the time where all the churches come together. It first starts from what we know in the United States. This is where the United States is going to lead out and have all the churches come together as a federation. They have witnessed this gigantic war, and they've witnessed this tragic, mysterious church judgment on the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So the fact of these two big matters happening is going to cause these churches to come together. Perplexity, all kinds of wonderment, bewilderment, everything like that is going to happen in the world because of these events. Now, keep in mind, the Sunday keeping pastors and the preachers for decades now have been misinterpreting the scriptures. They have read in there, for instance, Romans, where it says, all of Israel shall be saved. They have misapplied that to the current unbelieving nation of Israel today. And that's not the case. That's not truth. And this will be a great bewilderment to these people, which will cause them to get together and come together as a people and figure this out. Therefore, we can see that the Federation is certainly going to begin very soon, right after this. These two big events happen here. And then after that, because of this Federation is joining, the false prophet, the great deceiver, the beast, right here, as we can see in the chart, come on the scene. And this is a time for great miracles from the deceiver. This, if you know the message, you'll also know at this particular time, the remnant have 144,000 have returned to the land. And at the same time that this deceiving is going on, the great work of loud cry proclamation is being set up. The kingdom is being set up so that 144,000 can go out into the world on their final missionary tour and bring in the great multitude, which is spoken of in Revelation 7:9. So this is a great twofold controversy. The spirit of prophecy calls this the great controversy. And this is the two great forces that will fight each other. The Sunday keeping, uh, Sunday is the Sabbath proclaimers, with which the false prophet's going to be uh, deeply involved in. And then the Sabbath keeping people that's going to say, no, you've got to go back to true worship. You've got to worship the Lord on the Sabbath, the seventh day. And so this is going to be the great fight over worship. If you remember, this is going to be like a wheel. It's going to turn and come all the way around like it did in the very beginning of humankind. We know in the Garden of Eden, the first big skirmish or war, if you want to call it, between the brethren, between Cain and Abel, was over worship. Cain brought the flowers from his garden and fruits and so forth, and Abel brought the sacrifice, the animal sacrifice. So what that is one was trying to worship the way the Lord said, and the other was doing its own self-righteous worship. And of course, we know that one pleased the Lord and one did not. So in the final days, in this final great war, conflict between the two opposing parties, the two movements, one's going to be pleasing to the Lord and one's going to be disgusting to the Lord. And of course, we know if you're grounded in the scriptures, it will be the fourth commandment that will win out. That is the true seventh day Sabbath is going to win out the people for the Lord. And then, of course, as this happens here in this timeline, it develops into what's called the union and church state. Uh, it's going to encompass the whole world. So it starts out here in the United States, and then it proceeds and develops into a whole world movement. And this is the time the woman, which is the false church, the false religion, saddles the 10-horned beast here, see? And this is an indication of the world. So this whole movement's going to be worldwide. As the loud cry proclamation goes worldwide at the same time. So we can see a great battle. Now, here's another very timely quote. We'll pause again so you can read this one. So once again, this supports what we were discussing a little earlier. The great false movement is going to be expected to usher in a long millennial time of peace. And I want to touch on something as I'm reading this. It just occurs to me that we've done a post before. I don't know if it's this channel or other channel, but one of the posts that we did was the 666 man. And of course, if you know much about the message, you know that the 666 man is to be the head of a nation, the two-horned beast nation, just like it says in Revelation 13. And we've noticed now, I'm not claiming that this is the case, but we've noticed that our current president is habitual in giving the 666 hand signal. And we know that from before he became president in the campaign. We know that in many of his speeches, and currently today, he continues to give the hand signal of the 666. Now, we know that Revelation says this is how you will identify that person. So we can't make the declaration for sure, but we want to bring that to your attention. That is very, very unique situation. Again, we find in track 12, page 54, more concerning these end time events. We'll go ahead and pause again. So we see once again there are more descriptions of these end time events, and the Constitution, as it says, will be at that point totally scrapped. Obviously, we're going to see forced religion on people, and of course that has nothing to do with liberty. So your liberty, constitutional rights will be taken away, and forced religion will happen on the people. So we'd like to give you a little review again of what we know about these end time events. Um, Number one, the Great War, and the evidence can be found on track 14, page 22, Zechariah 14, and Zephaniah 2. We suggest that you write these down and research them yourselves to get a better understanding, but those point to this Great War. Number two, Ezekiel 9, and that's, of course, can be found in Fundamental Beliefs number 4. So these are the events, the war, and then Ezekiel 9. Number three, after the war in Ezekiel 9, the 144 then travel home, and it is that time that they experience Jacob's time of trouble. Of course, you can find that fundamental belief number 7 and Jeremiah 31 to 11. So number 4, during this time, the church federation begins to be set up. The false prophet and Satan appears. Of course, you have the proof of all three charts to SROD, page 157 and 158. That this, as we mentioned before, this is a concurrent movement. While the 144,000 are in the kingdom being setting up for the proclamation of loud cry, the Church Federation is also being set up in America. And then both movements develop, and they become greater and greater and bigger. And this is that great controversy. And then lastly, the saints stand with the Lamb. Once the 144,000 get back, they are to stand with the Lamb. Of course, that's found in 14, Revelation 14, 1 to 5, and fundamental number 9. We don't know the extent of what's entailed in that standing with the Lamb. We know that there may be some type of instructions given. There may be that new heart operation that Ezekiel 11 speaks about while we stand. We don't know the specifics of what's going to happen at that point. I know from my understanding of the message, we're not going to be able to physically see him because we have not been changed in a twinkling of an eye, and our bodies are still mortal. So we would burn up if we were able to actually physically see him at that time. But it's going to be a great thing. And those basically are the 5 near events. And then we go on to number 6, and the kingdom is set up. And of course, you have all those references. You can pause this as we're going and write down all these references for research. Number 7, after the kingdom gets set up. Now, we got to keep this in mind first. The kingdom is set up. So some of the teachers are saying that, well, you stand with the Lamb and then boom, you go right out into the world. No, you stay. From what I understand, we stay in the land of Israel and help set up the kingdom. Now, this might take a month. This might take 7 months, 8 months, or quite a while. But it's going to be a little while the kingdom is set up. And then once that's set up, then the 144,000 go out. That's number 7. They go out into Babylon and do their missionary tour. Number 8, this tour is prophesied to bring a great success around the world. Many, many, many people. Of course, Spirit Prophecy talks about that. The Rod is full of references about that. The great multitude at that time, though, we've got to keep this in mind, experienced their Jacob's time of trouble. How we know that is because Spirit of Prophecy is very clear about the end time, Jacob's time of trouble. The Spirit of Prophecy, as we know, did not have too much light on 144,000, where the Rod had a lot of light on 144,000. Therefore, the Rod could illuminate the Jacob's time of trouble for the 144,000. But the spirit of prophecy, because of the limited light on the Elijah message, didn't know that particular part of it. So she expanded upon the Jacob's time of trouble in that period of time with the great multitude. And number 9, this great success is going to cause Satan to pull out all stops. And this is going to cause the universal. Now, we understand that it could be that America begins this law first, and then that law goes universally. But the great success universally is going to cause Satan to cause a likewise universal law that you must worship on Sunday to the point of death. It's going to evolve into a death decree if you don't do that. So this is where Satan gets desperate and sees the great success that the 144,000 are doing. God's servants are doing. And the Lord has poured out his spirit, just like Joel 2 talks about. The 144,000 have now become his army. And they're doing great work, pulling out the great multitude and bringing them back home. And this is going to cause furious behavior from Satan and his workers. All the Sunday keeping pastors and these false believers are going to be furious about this work, and they're going to go ahead and try to hinder it and do the universal Sunday law. And then number 10, the final great multitude come in, and the final work is gathered in to bring in all those that accept the loud cry proclamation. And number 11, the probation is over, and the 7 last plagues begin. That is once the 7 last plagues begin, as we know, it's over. There's no more chance for anybody to be saved, and it's dreadful because the time is no more, and whoever at that point doesn't come into the kingdom is lost. And so we wanted to give this scenario because of the times that we're living in, and we know that the Middle East is becoming very, very hot. Russia, China, Iran, Turkey, all of these countries seem to be gauging up for something. And United States, Great Britain, Australia, France, Germany, this is what's called the Western Bloc. And they're going to be the opposing force in this war, but they're going to lose out. That's what the message tells us. They are going to lose out. Russia, China, all these countries of the Eastern Bloc are going to win. And consequently, the land will be cleared out for, as we said, the 144,000 to go back. And the Lord's promises that he's made all throughout Scripture, that he will return his people to the Holy Land. And this will come about. So we stand on the brink of some exciting times. And let's pray and keep our mind focused on the Lord and be ready when this happens. And may all those be blessed with this truth. Until next time, may the Lord be with you.